The country club's Sunday brunch buffet gleamed under crystal chandeliers, but the atmosphere at our family table was anything but sparkling. I sat in my simple black dress, Target not designer, watching my family dissect my life choices with the precision of surgeons and the compassion of tax auditors. I'm Victoria Hayes, though my family had taken to introducing me as our daughter who's going through a phase. At 29, I was the disappointment who'd chosen to start a tech company over joining the family law firm, who lived in a cramped studio apartment instead of the guest house they'd offered, who drove a used Toyota instead of accepting the BMW they tried to gift me. The black sheep who spent 18-hour days coding and pitching while they attended charity galas and golf tournaments. Victoria, darling, my mother Elizabeth said, her voice dripping with the kind of concern that felt more like condescension, we need to discuss your situation. My father, Judge Harrison Hayes, folded his newspaper with the deliberate precision he used in his courtroom. 5 years, Victoria. 5 years of this startup nonsense. Don't you think it's time to be realistic? My brother Cameron, golden child and junior partner at Hayes and Associates, smirked over his eggs Benedict. I heard from the Johnsons' son that you're still living in that tiny apartment. What do you even do all day? Play video games. I build software, I said quietly, cutting my toast into precise squares. The same way I'd organized my thoughts for the pitch I'd given yesterday to a room full of venture capitalists who actually understood what I was creating. Software, my sister-in-law Miranda repeated with a little laugh. How technical. Elizabeth set down her mimosa with the kind of dramatic pause she'd perfected during her theater days. Enough of this startup fantasy, she declared, her voice carrying across nearby tables. You're embarrassing the family. I looked up from my toast. Embarrassing how? Margaret Wilson asked me yesterday what you do for a living, Elizabeth continued, color rising in her cheeks. Do you know how humiliating it was to explain that my daughter is unemployed? I'm not unemployed, Mom. I run a company. Cameron snorted. A company? You mean that thing you do on your laptop? Come on, Vic, Mom's right. This has gone on long enough. Dad leaned forward, using his judge voice. We've been patient, Victoria. More than patient. But you're nearly 30 years old. It's time to grow up and join the real world. The partnership track is still open, Cameron added helpfully. Dad can make some calls. You could start as an associate, work your way up. Steady income, benefits, respectability. Miranda nodded enthusiastically. And think about your future family. You can't raise children on startup dreams. I took a sip of orange juice, noting how they'd all coordinated this intervention. Probably planned it over their weekly family dinner, the one I'd stopped attending months ago when these conversations became unbearable. What exactly do you think I do all day? I asked calmly. Elizabeth waved her hand dismissively. I'm sure you try very hard, dear. But this whole entrepreneur thing is just fantasy. Real businesses require real capital, real experience, real connections. You can't just make something successful by wishing it so. Maybe if you'd gone to business school instead of dropping out of law school, Dad added, you'd understand how the business world actually works. I almost laughed. If only they knew about the meetings I'd been taking, the investors who'd been circling, the acquisition offers I'd been fielding. About the company that had grown from my cramped apartment to occupying 3 floors of a downtown office building. You know what Margaret Wilson's daughter does? Elizabeth continued. She's a federal prosecutor. A real job with real impact. Not playing around with computers. My phone buzzed against the table. Unknown number. I normally would have let it go to voicemail, but something made me glance at the screen. The caller ID showed a 212 area code, New York. Excuse me, I said, standing. I should take this. Victoria, Elizabeth called after me. We're having a family discussion. This will just take a moment. I stepped away from the table, noting how other families glanced our way. The Hayes family drama was probably entertainment for their own Sunday brunches. Hello. Ms. Victoria Hayes? The voice was professional, crisp. This is Jessica Chin from Forbes magazine. I'm calling about your cover story interview. The world seemed to tilt sideways. I gripped my phone tighter. I'm sorry, could you repeat that? Forbes magazine. We're running your story as our cover feature for the upcoming issue on Tech's Rising Stars. Your company, NeuralSync, has been selected as our Startup of the Year. We'd like to schedule the cover photo shoot and final interview. Are you available this week? I looked back at my family, still huddled around their table, probably planning their next wave of concern and criticism. They had no idea that the daughter they were trying to save from her delusions had just been selected for the cover of Forbes. This week would be perfect, I managed to say. Excellent. We're particularly interested in discussing the $50 million Series B funding round you just closed, and of course the acquisition offer from Google. Our readers are fascinated by entrepreneurs who bootstrapped their way to unicorn status. $50 million. The number hung in the air like a challenge to everything my family believed about my fantasy life. I'll have my assistant send over the details, Jessica continued. Congratulations again, Ms. Hayes. Your story is exactly the kind of inspiration our readers love. Thank you, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I ended the call and stood there for a moment, watching my family through the restaurant's windows. They were animated now, probably discussing how to stage their next intervention. How to save me from myself. I walked back to the table, slipping my phone into my purse. They looked up expectantly, like parents waiting for a child to confess some misdeed. Important call? Cameron asked with obvious sarcasm. You could say that. Elizabeth leaned forward. Victoria, we're trying to help you. This resistance to reality isn't healthy. What do you consider reality, Mom? Real success, she said firmly. Financial stability. Professional recognition. The kind of achievements that matter. Dad nodded. Your mother's right. Success isn't about chasing dreams. It's about building something substantial, something respectable. Like Forbes magazine? I asked innocently. Miranda laughed. Well, yes. That's exactly the kind of recognition that matters. If you could get your little computer hobby featured in Forbes, that would be something. Interesting you should mention that. Cameron raised an eyebrow. Don't tell me you applied for some entrepreneur contest. Actually, I said, sitting back down and placing my phone on the table, that was Forbes calling about my cover story. The silence that followed was absolute. Elizabeth's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. Dad's newspaper crumpled in his grip. Cameron's smirk melted like ice in summer heat. Cover story? Elizabeth whispered. For what? Dad demanded. I pulled up the Forbes website on my phone, scrolling to the announcement that had gone live that morning. Tech's Rising Stars issue. NeuralSync was selected as Startup of the Year. The phone screen showed my company's logo alongside the headline, From Dorm Room to $500 Million, the Victoria Hayes Success Story. Cameron grabbed the phone, his eyes scanning the article. His face went from confused to pale to something approaching gray. $500 million? He croaked. Valuation, I corrected. Though the acquisition offers have been higher. Elizabeth's coffee cup slipped from her fingers, shattering against the marble floor. The sound drew stares from every table in the restaurant, but for once she didn't seem to care about appearances. Acquisition offers? Dad's judge voice had become a whisper. Google's been persistent, I said calmly. Though I'm more interested in the partnership Tesla proposed. Better alignment with our technology's potential. Miranda was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. Tesla? As in Elon Musk's Tesla. The very same. Our neural interface technology has applications they're interested in exploring. Cameron was still scrolling through the article, his face getting paler with each paragraph. It says here you started the company with $5,000. My savings from tutoring in college, I confirmed. Though the Series B funding round just closed at $50 million. $50 million, Elizabeth repeated faintly. The A round was $12 million, I added helpfully. I probably should have mentioned it, but you seemed so concerned about my lack of real income. Dad found his voice. Victoria, how long have you been successful? Depends how you define success. If you mean profitable, about 2 years. If you mean industry recognition, 18 months. If you mean life-changing wealth. I paused, watching their faces. About 6 months. The maitre d' appeared with staff to clean up Elizabeth's broken cup, shooting disapproving glances at our table. Other diners were openly staring now, trying to piece together what had caused such a dramatic scene. Why didn't you tell us? Cameron asked, his voice hollow. I considered the question carefully. Would you have believed me? Or would you have accused me of fantasizing again? The truth sat between us like an uninvited guest. Besides, I continued, I tried to share my progress early on. Remember when I got my first investor meeting? You said I was being naive. When I signed my first major client, Dad told me not to get my hopes up. When TechCrunch wrote about us, Mom said she hoped I wouldn't let it go to my head. They had the grace to look ashamed. Elizabeth found her voice. But you live in that tiny apartment. By choice. It's 3 blocks from my office. Walking to work gives me time to think. And the car? Dad asked weakly. The Toyota. Reliable, efficient, low profile. I've had enough attention from investors. I don't need more from car thieves. Miranda was staring at me with new eyes. How many employees do you have? 47, I said. Though we're hiring aggressively. The Forbes article will probably bring more applications than we can handle. Cameron set down my phone with trembling hands. The Johnson's son, he said you were struggling. The Johnson's son works for our competitor. He knows exactly how well we're doing. I smiled slightly. Though his company's market share has been declining since our launch. Victoria, Elizabeth said slowly, are you rich? That depends on your definition. If you mean can I afford this restaurant? Yes. Can I buy this country club? Also yes. Can I afford to never work again? Probably, though I enjoy what I do too much to stop. The silence stretched between us, heavy with years of misunderstanding and missed opportunities. The cover story, Dad said finally. When does it come out? Next week. Jessica mentioned they're particularly interested in the bootstrapping story. Apparently, starting a unicorn company with $5,000 and no family money is unusual in Silicon Valley. Elizabeth winced. No family money. I never asked for family money, I reminded her gently. You made it very clear that supporting my fantasy would be enabling bad decision-making. Cameron cleared his throat. About the partnership at the firm. Still not interested, I said. Though I appreciate the offer. But we could. He struggled to find words. We could work together. I studied my brother's face, seeing calculation behind his confusion. Work together how? Legal counsel, he said quickly. A company your size must need legal representation. Corporate law, intellectual property, contracts. We do, I agreed. We work with Wilson, Crane and Associates in San Francisco. They specialize in tech companies. Dad leaned forward. We could handle your needs just as well. Better even. We're family. There was the word they'd been avoiding for 5 years of criticism and concern. Now that they'd discovered I was successful, we were family again. Dad, I said gently, you practice criminal law and personal injury. Cameron does estate planning and real estate. Neither of you knows anything about technology law or venture capital regulations. We could learn, Elizabeth said quickly. I'm sure you could. But why would I fire lawyers who helped me build a $500 million company to hire lawyers who spent 5 years telling me I was wasting my time? The question hung in the air like a challenge. My phone buzzed again. This time I recognized the number. My CFO. Excuse me, I said answering. Hey Marcus. Victoria, have you seen the Forbes announcement? Our website crashed from traffic. We've had 17 acquisition inquiries since this morning. Expected, I said, watching my family's faces as they processed this new information. Any serious offers? 3. All above our target range. Want me to set up calls for tomorrow? Tuesday would be better. I have the Forbes photo shoot Monday. Got it. Oh, and congratulations on the cover. Well deserved. I ended the call and looked at my family's expectant faces. Business? Dad asked. Always. Success requires constant attention to detail. Elizabeth was studying me like she'd never seen me before. Victoria, I have to ask, are you happy? The question caught me off guard. Of all the things I'd expected her to say, that wasn't one of them. Very, I said honestly. I love what I do. I love the problems we solve, the team we've built, the impact we're having. I can't imagine doing anything else. Even with all the stress. The uncertainty. I almost laughed. Mom, what uncertainty? We have 2 years of operating expenses in the bank, more clients than we can serve, and acquisition offers that would set us up for life. The only uncertainty is which opportunities to pursue. Cameron was still staring at my phone like it might reveal more secrets. 17 acquisition inquiries. In one morning. The Forbes effect, I explained. Though we've been getting unsolicited offers for months. Success attracts attention. Miranda finally spoke. Victoria, I owe you an apology. We all do. I studied her face, looking for genuine remorse versus social calculation. She seemed sincere, but then again $50 million had a way of making people seem sincere. Apology for what, exactly? For not believing in you. For not supporting you. For thinking we knew better. For calling it a fantasy, Elizabeth added quietly. For suggesting you were embarrassing the family, Dad said, his voice heavy with shame. Cameron nodded. For treating you like you didn't know what you were doing. I considered their words carefully. These were the same people who'd spent 5 years dismissing my dreams, questioning my choices, and suggesting I needed to be more realistic. Now that they'd discovered I was worth more than all of them combined, they wanted to apologize. I appreciate that, I said finally. But apologies are just words. The real question is whether you've learned anything from this experience. What do you mean? Elizabeth asked. I mean, do you understand why I stopped coming to family dinners? Why I didn't share my successes with you? Why I kept my distance from all your advice and concern? They exchanged glances, the kind of silent family communication that comes from years of shared experiences. Because we weren't really trying to help you, Dad said slowly. We were trying to make you into what we thought you should be. Because we couldn't see past our own definitions of success, Cameron added. Because we were more concerned with how your choices reflected on us than with whether they were right for you, Elizabeth finished. I nodded. And we were wrong, Miranda said simply. About everything. The waiter appeared, probably wondering if we were planning to order more food or just continue occupying the table through the lunch rush. I glanced around, noticing that several other families had been seated and served while we'd been having our revelation. I should go, I said standing. I have calls to make about those acquisition offers. Victoria, wait, Elizabeth called. Could we start over? Maybe have dinner this week? Just family. I paused, considering the offer. What would be different? Everything, she said quickly. We want to learn about your work, your company, your life. Really learn, not just judge. No more suggestions about joining the law firm? Cameron raised his hand. Never again. No more concern about my living situation or lifestyle choices? Only supportive interest, Dad promised. No more comments about embarrassing the family? Elizabeth's face reddened. I can't believe I said that. I'm mortified. I looked around the table at their expectant faces. These were the same people who'd spent 5 years making me feel like a failure, but they were also my family. And according to the Forbes article, forgiveness was one of the traits that had contributed to my success. Dinner sounds nice, I said finally. But somewhere I choose. And I'll pay. You don't have to, Dad started. I want to, I interrupted. I can afford it now, remember? As I gathered my purse, my phone buzzed with another call. This time the caller ID showed Elon Musk. I stared at the screen for a moment, then looked up at my family's curious faces. I really do need to take this, I said apologetically. Is that? Cameron started. The Tesla partnership we discussed? Yes. I answered the call as I walked away from the table. Hello, Mr. Musk. Victoria. Congratulations on the Forbes cover. Well deserved. Are you ready to change the world? Behind me, I could hear Elizabeth asking the waiter for another coffee cup and a towel to clean up the mess. In front of me, one of the most innovative minds in technology was offering to partner with the company my family had called a fantasy just an hour earlier. Always ready, I replied, pushing through the country club's doors into the bright afternoon sunlight. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving people wrong. It's proving yourself right so thoroughly that they have no choice but to recognize what they missed while they were busy looking down on you. As I walked to my reliable Toyota, already planning my conversation with Elon about neural interfaces and electric vehicles, I smiled. Tomorrow would bring the Forbes photo shoot, calls from acquisition-hungry companies, and probably more family members suddenly interested in rekindling our relationship. But today I had a world to change, one line of code at a time. 3 months later, I stood in the lobby of the new NeuralSync headquarters, watching as construction crews put the finishing touches on our expansion. The Forbes cover story had exceeded all expectations, bringing in talent, clients, and opportunities we'd never imagined. Ms. Hayes. My assistant approached with her tablet. Your family is here for the tour. I looked toward the reception area where Elizabeth, Dad, Cameron, and Miranda stood waiting. They'd kept their promise about dinner and to my surprise had genuinely tried to understand my work. Cameron had even read 3 books about technology law, while Elizabeth had started volunteering with a nonprofit that taught coding to underserved youth. Send them up, I said. And Marcus? Start the presentation with the Tesla partnership announcement. As the elevator doors opened to reveal my family, I saw something in their faces I'd never seen before. Genuine pride. Not the calculating interest that had followed the Forbes article, but real admiration for what I'd built. Victoria, Elizabeth said, embracing me warmly. This place is incredible. 47 employees when we last talked, Dad noted, looking around at the bustling office space. How many now? 93, I replied. We're still growing. Cameron was studying the neural interface prototypes displayed in our showcase. I've been reading about this technology. The applications are limitless. That's the idea, I agreed. Though we're starting with medical applications, helping paralyzed patients regain motor function. Miranda touched my arm. You're changing lives, Victoria. Real lives. As we walked through the office, I introduced them to my team, showed them our latest innovations, and explained the partnerships that were reshaping entire industries. My family listened with genuine interest, asked thoughtful questions, and for the first time in years, treated me like an expert rather than a dreamer. The acquisition offers, Dad said as we finished the tour. Are you considering any of them? We've decided to stay independent for now, I replied. We're having too much fun building something new. Elizabeth smiled. Your grandfather would be proud. He always said the best businesses are the ones that make the world better. He would have understood what you were doing, Cameron added. Even when we didn't. As my family prepared to leave, Elizabeth pulled me aside. Victoria, I have something to ask you. The charity gala next month. Would you consider being our keynote speaker? The theme is local success stories, and frankly, you're the biggest success story this city has ever produced. I considered the request. A year ago, they'd been embarrassed to explain what I did for a living. Now they wanted me to be the face of local achievement. What would you want me to talk about? Whatever you want. Your journey, your company, your vision for the future. People need to hear that success is possible, even when it doesn't look like what everyone expects. I smiled, thinking about the girl who'd started coding in her dorm room, who'd been told by her own family that her dreams were fantasies. I'd be honored, I said. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't in proving people wrong. It's in helping them understand what they couldn't see before, and then building something together that's stronger than what any of you could have achieved alone. The Forbes cover still hung in my office, not as a trophy, but as a reminder that success comes not from meeting other people's expectations, but from exceeding your own. And judging by the acquisition offers still pouring in, the patents we were filing, and the lives we were changing, I was just getting started.